This is episode number 48 of the Emotional Freedom Podcast. Now, have you ever found yourself, you are spiraling downwards in your mind, that is? Meaning to say, you keep on thinking about the bad things that's going to happen, you keep on worrying a lot, and you keep on asking questions that you yourself can't answer. And for that matter, nobody else can answer it too. And as you are stuck in that situation, you find your energy being sapped away and you find yourself slowly going into anxiety and depression. Now, and if you have experienced that, then you will find today's episode useful because in today's episode, I want to share with you about how you can snap out of these limiting thinking patterns. So stay tuned. I want to welcome you to this episode of the Emotional Freedom Podcast. I am Luke Bong, your host. I am an NLP trainer and a clinical hypnotherapist. Now, if this is the first time for you to join this podcast, I just want to say thank you for joining and I want to welcome you. Now, this podcast is created with the aim of sharing with you ideas and tips that you can use to take charge of your emotional state so that you can live the life that you want. Now, before I continue, I just want to ask if you enjoyed this podcast in the past, please consider to subscribe this podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcast, and also on my YouTube channel and on my Facebook page. Okay, I would really appreciate if you will also leave a review on this podcast players that you listen in. Okay, thank you very much. Now, let's go into this topic for today. You see, there are times whereby people, they get stuck in a rut. And stuck in a rut, by that I mean that no matter what you think, you felt as if there's no hope, there's no door for you to exit a situation. And I give you one example. Now, this guy was actually my student, and I'll just call him as John. Okay, so I don't have a student named John, I'll just use John, yeah? Now, and John was a nice guy, okay, very pleasant, but he has an issue, and that is he always gets stuck in a rut. And the reason for that, after talking to him, after asking him some questions, coaching him, I discovered that it was because he has a habit of asking a two-word question. And this question is, how come? How come? How come this has to happen? How come it's so difficult? How come it rained when I want it to have sunshine? How come? How come? And I told him, John, how come this question has no answer? It's impossible to answer you that. But if you are stuck with just asking how come, you will be stuck in a situation whereby you can't find an answer. And when you don't find an answer, you go into frustration. And that is the state of emotion that John frequently finds himself in. And that was frustration because he couldn't come up with an answer. You see, it's very simple in life. You ask a dumb question, you get a dumb answer. You ask a good question, you get an empowering answer. So how do you go about to snap yourself out from this state? And I call it a stupid state. I know that it doesn't sound good, but when I do it in training, it really helps people to understand that we can choose between being in a resourceful state where we are constantly thinking of how to overcome, how to find the answer, or we can go into a stupid state where the answer could be right in front of your eyes and you still can't see it. So today's episode, I want to share with you two ways of how you can actually snap out of this stupid state, kind of a thinking pattern. And both of them has got to do with asking questions. Because questions, a good question, actually contains the answer. And if you ask a lousy question, you get a lousy answer. Okay, simple as that. Now, whenever a person find themselves, they are stuck in a rut, caught in a rut, I can bet you money that they are usually thinking of questions like, why must it be so bad? How come this has to happen to me? How come, it happens at the wrong time? How come? And in that kind of a situation, what you really need to do is you need to step out from it. Take a step back. Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath, take a step back, and look at the question that you have just asked yourself. How come? And remember, how come has no answer. So instead of focusing on the problem and also how come it happened to you, I think a better one would be to approach it from a different angle. So the angle could be, not how can this happen to me? Then I think you are using the same type of questioning again, just different words. Instead, you want to ask yourself, how can I resolve this? How can I talk to that person so that they can help me to overcome this situation together? So it is all about changing the question that you asked. So instead of focusing on just the problem and making it bigger than it actually is, I would like you to start to focus on the solution by asking questions like, what is it about this issue that I have not considered before? What is it about this issue that I have not tried before? And you will find that when you ask the right questions, your mind begins to work really, really well. Because that's the function of your mind in the first place. It is to serve you by answering your questions. Okay, make sense to you? Okay, now moving on to the second method. And the second method was actually derived from a very old sitcom called Seinfeld. And in one of those episodes, Seinfeld actually said this. If let's say you tend to make all the wrong choices in your life, and you are making all the wrong choices in your life, the solution is actually very simple. All you have to do is think of what you will make in that situation and just do the complete opposite. And that would be the right decision. Now, although it's done in a sitcom, in a comedy, and it was so funny when you watched it, the reality is it's actually pretty good advice. You see, if you are the type that you have been making wrong choices in your life all the time, then the fastest way for you to start making right choices is whatever you have chosen, just do the opposite and just do it. That's it. Makes sense, right? But of course, you want to do it responsibly as well. And if you feel as if you don't have enough of experience to make that decision for yourself, what you can do is look for someone who has experienced that before, who has had a good experience in that, or they have managed to overcome the same issue or challenges that you are overcoming, and seek advice from them. Because they must have done something right to get to where they are today. So when you find yourself caught in a rut, you don't have to stay there. You don't have to stay there by asking questions that will keep you there. Questions that have no answer, like how come? Instead, focus on questions that will lead you to a different place. Questions that will open your mind. Questions that will make you begin to think of possibilities on resources rather than why the door is closed. And the second one is focus on doing the opposite of what you have always done so that you can get a different outcome and a different result. So thanks for joining me in this episode. I hope you have found that useful, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.